Okay, I'm going to sit beside you when I interview
Sure.
you here.
All right. Okay.
Okay, now this will be good.
All right.
Good morning, everyone. Today is 3 March, the year 2004. I'm Dr. Dave Thompson, a volunteer at the Palm Springs Air Museum here in California. Part of our mission is to record and preserve the history of our country's military conflicts, especially World War II. As part of the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., we conduct interviews of veterans and civilians who participated in those conflicts. Today, I'm here at the museum and have the honor and the privilege of interviewing Sergeant Joe Frangona. Sergeant Frangona was in the Marine Corps during World War II, served with the 1st Marine Division on Okinawa, and then later served with the 1st Marines in North China from September of 45 to March of 1946. So we're going to talk to him about that and a lot of other things. Nice to have you here, Joe.
Okay, Doctor.
Okay.
Right.
Joe, first of all, would you spell your full name for us?
Right. It's Joseph, Frangona.
Okay.
Joseph Frangona.
Okay, and when and where were you born?
I was born in a little town in the Gulf of Squillace in Italy. It's Ciromarina.
Oh, how do you
Ciromarina. And I was 2.5 years old when I left Italy with my mother to come to the States. Now there's a story behind that. My father came to the United States in 1913. He worked at the Pullman Standard in Lindora for 4 years, and when the war broke out, he told my aunt, who he was living with at the time, that don't make any bucket for him because he already enlisted in the Army. And the thing that I admire about my dad is that when he went to enlist in the Army, the sergeant there asked him, he says, where were you born? He told him where he was born in Italy. He says, well, you're not a citizen. He said, you don't have to, enlist. My father says, if I'm good enough to work for this country, I'm good enough to fight for it. So he served in France. 3 months later, after he was at Fort Bragg, and he served in France, and after the war was over, he came back home. He worked for another year at the Pullman Standard in Lindora. Then he went back to Italy, married my mother, and he said, after 3 months after their honeymoon, he came back to the States. And naturally, I was born while he was in the States. So he became a citizen. We came back in the States, and he put my mother's name and my name on the certificate of naturalization. And to make a long story short, my mother would have come sooner, but her father died, and there was other sickness in the family. So by the time things got straightened out, we didn't come over until I was 2.5 years old to the United States of America.
Okay. And what part of Italy is that?
It's in the southern part. It's in what they call Calabria. It's if you take a look at Italy, where the heel is and where it curves around, that is the Gulf of Squillace, and it's actually an abutment from the Ionian Sea, and then the Adriatic runs from the north down into the south. And then you have the Mediterranean, and then you have Sicily at the boot, the Straits of Messina, the Tyrrhenian Sea, so forth and so on. But
what was your father's name?
my father's name was Anthony Frangona.
Okay. And what about his father? What did he do?
My father's
Your grandfather
was also in the Italian Army, and he served in the Italian Army for a year or so, and see, they only, when you got to be 20 or 21, when you got to be 21, when you're in Italy, they indoctrinated you to the effect that you had to be militaristic. So he met my grandmother in Naples. So he married her after he got out of the army. And so I have Napolitan blood in me, besides Calabrese, besides other stuff. There is no such a thing as the Italian race.
Yeah.
It's all mixed up, so whatever.
Yeah.
But that's it.
And what? How far back can you trace your family in Italy?
Well, as far as I know, Dr. Thompson, from what I discerned from my mother's conversation, I can only trace them back to my immediate grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
That, and then there's a few other relatives that from my wife's great aunt, but then from that it's really hazy. They didn't keep too many records. I'll be honest with you.
I know. And but what did your grandfather do? What kind of work did he do after he got out of the army?
My grandfather worked. He kept what they call a bottega. A bottega in Italian language is nothing more than a grocery store.
Oh,
He
okay.
sold meats and vegetables and so forth, so on. Now my grandfather, my mother's side, he was more or less of a foreman. He went out. People contracted him to take care of their fields, and he had a lot of men to control. And in that, he made sure that they worked, made sure that the products like the olives, whatever was being produced, was done properly. And sometimes he was away for months, but that was the way he made his living. He made a pretty good living out of it.
And what was your mother's name?
My mother's name was Agatha Manaka, and then when she married my father, naturally.
And she grew up in Naples. She was born in Naples.
No,
Oh,
she was born in Chidon Marina. She was
oh, okay.
she was right in Chidon Marina.
Yeah, but her mother.
Her mother was there.
Okay.
See,
Now, have you been back to that area before?
my wife and I have been back to Italy twice within the last 5 years of our last trip. But before that, we were in Italy on a pilgrimage through our church, and it was quite nice. Rome, Venice,
Oh, yeah.
Siena, the whole works. But this last trip was was nice too, because we went all down through the coast.
Did you see any of your relatives? Did you see any relatives?
Yes, my first cousin there is a doctor in Rome, and I went to his home, and we were treated really well by him.
Yeah. Do you speak Italian?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, I spoke Calabrese at home, but my good fortune was that I had a year of it in college, so I refined it a little bit, so I can get by on it.
Let's talk about your dad a little bit more. He was in the Italian army,
Right.
and then how is it that he came to the United States?
He came to the United States in 1913 because I asked him one day, I said, "Papa, why did you come to the United States?" And he says, "Tired of eating bread and onions." And he said, all these, the men that he knew, the fellows that he grew up with, worked in the fields, doctor. And so that's the reason why. And during that particular time, between, I would say, 1898 to 1910, 13, over 3 million Italians came from not only Calabria, but from Sicily also, because the fact that the poverty there was so great.
Did he know anyone over here when he first came?
Yeah, his sister was married to a fellow by the name of Russo, and when he brought her over, that's how my father got to come over. He had
And
somebody that sponsor him.
And where did he settle, or where did he come when he first came to the States?
He came to Lindora, PA, which is right outside of Butler, which is 40 miles north of Pittsburgh.
Okay. And so, so when World War I broke out,
When World War I broke out, he worked at the Pullman Standard for 4 years. And when the World War I broke out, he came home.
Or when we got involved.
When we got involved, he came home and he said, don't make any more lunches for me, he says, because I enlisted in the Army. Okay. And that's what happened.
And did he talk about his experiences in World War I in the Army?
Papa didn't talk too much about what he experienced over there in France, other than the fact that it was bad. And he just didn't talk too much about war, per se.
Okay. So when he came back, he was working with
he came back and worked at the Pullman Standard for a year.
What is that? What's Pullman Standard? What are they?
Pullman Standard manufactured cars, coal cars. You know, you see these hoppers. They haul coal.
Yes.
And then they have these other cars that are round and cylindrical. They haul chemicals. And then you have the Pullman cars that people sleep in.
And so what did he do there?
What did my father do? My father worked in the bolts and rivets department. That's where they made the bolts and the rivets to go in to the cars, where they, bolt and riveted the box cars and what have you, wherever they needed bolts and rivets.
It must have been pretty hot in there, wasn't it?
Hot and tough. Papa was really rough. He not rough in that sense, but he was strong. He could pick up. Men told me. I met his superintendent when I was in the Corps. Coming down the street one time, I came home on Liberty, and Mr. Truby was his name. He said, my father introduced me to him. He said, you know what? He says, if you were as tough and as strong as your father, he says, you have nothing to worry about. And my dad stood there, real, big smile on his face. I said, well, I know he was strong because I heard other people tell me about him. I was really proud of my dad.
I assume, that you grew up, did you have any brothers and sisters?
I had 4 sisters. So I was the oldest. So they all took care of me. I was spoiled.
What was their name?
Plus my mother.
What were their names?
My first sister's name was Amelia. Second was Jean. Third was Dora. And the fourth was Esther. Unfortunately, Esther died 3 years ago. She was my youngest one.
Do they all live back in that area now?
No. My oldest sister lives, she's married and she had 4 sons. She lived in Ashtabula. Jean Ann, my second sister, lives in Butler yet. She had 5 children. Dora lives in Harrisburg, PA. She had 3 children. And Esther didn't get married. So
I assume you kind of grew up during the Depression. What was that like for you? Did your dad have a job the whole time, or?
My father worked at the Struthers and Wells in Warren, PA. He worked in a foundry, and I can remember we moved from Lindora to Butler when I was 5. I was 5 years old, and the reason we moved to Warren is because my wife's aunt lived in Warren, PA. So there was a connection there. So Papa worked in a foundry. He worked at Struthers and Wells, and it was only a block and a half from our home. And I think in later life, as I got older and as he got older, working in the foundry for quite a few years hurt his lungs. Mm. Plus the fact that ocean at that time did not exist. Let's face it, there was no laws, and no unions or anything like that. But he worked hard, and I have to love my father for what he did. I mean, from him, I got indoctrinated in how to put food on the table. He did it. Even when he was sick, he went to work, and I learned a lot from him. And I can remember when the Depression came, and eventually he was laid off, and I came home from school. I was 6 at the time. They're 7 years old. And I came home from school, and I asked Mama, where's Papa? He says, he got laid off. I said, where's he at? He's in the bathroom. I knocked on the door. He said, come on in. And that was the first time I saw my father cry. And he was sitting with the lid of the toilet down, and he was crying. He was biting his knuckles. I said, Papa, what's wrong? You know, I was just a little kid then. What's wrong? He says, lost my job. I said, we'll do all right, you know. When I think about it, I feel sorry about that, but we survived. We lost all our money. I mean, Papa and Mama saved 3,000 some odd dollars in the bank, and we lost all our money, everything. And but we survived.
So did you, when you were growing up, did you have odd jobs and things like that yourself, or?
No. The only thing that I did that was not conducive to a personality that would enhance my liking to the sisters or the nuns that taught me was to deliberately get thrown out of school on a Friday so I could go out and sell papers and bring 35 cents home to my mother. That I regret. And it was bad. I mean, it was tough growing up during the Depression, but that was all.
And what was the address? Where did you live?
We lived on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is a main street in Warren, PA. It's 902 Pennsylvania Avenue. I remember that like it's nothing. And when Dora was born, we had to move out. So we moved to Laurel Street, 414.5 Laurel Street. Never forget it. It's only about 3 blocks away from the school.
How big was the town? This was Warren?
It was Warren, PA. When we were there, it was around 12,000 people. I don't know at this point, it's a matter of conjecture with me how big of a town it is now.
And where did you go to grammar school?
I went to St. Joseph's Elementary School.
And
Became an old boy when I was 8.
Yeah,
That
well,
was-
me
that
too. Me too. I went to St. Joseph's. And what order of nuns did you have?
St. Benedict.
I had those for high school. I had Franciscans for grade school.
Yeah. I can remember my first elementary school teacher's name, Sister Eulalia. And I can remember Sister Clara, Sister Alice. Sister Alice got me interested in history a lot because she's the one when I was 8 years old, I had her for not only Bible history but American history. She would draw all these blue, you know, about the Revolutionary War. She drew Dr. Thompson. She drew blue marks for the rebels and red marks for the British soldiers. And she went through it. She made it alive for a little kid, you know.
Yeah.
She got me interested in history.
Yeah,
Put it that
I've
way.
always had an interest in history too, from back about that. Did your parents speak English at home, or did they speak Italian, or what?
They talked Italian a lot, but then as time went on, they got to talk English. My father could talk not only English good, but he could talk Polish, and he could talk Italian, because when he worked at the bolts and rivets, Dr. Thompson, what happened is that a lot of Polish people worked there, and he got to know them. We lived around Polish people when I was young, and he got to know the language pretty well. And he talked Polish pretty good. He could talk Polish well, better than I can.
Did you like sports when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, yes. I hurt myself quite a bit playing football, and I hurt my arm, and in later life it necessitated a fracture, a bone chip, and I had to have an operation on my arm, you know. And I played a lot of football when I was a young kid, but I hurt myself when I got in high school bad.
You playing football in high school?
Yeah.
Oh.
A couple of, it took me, after I got out of school, it took me about 2 months for a broken nose. We didn't have masks in those days, but I played 3 years in high school.
What position did you play? What position did you play?
Quarterback. The only thing problem with that, Dr. Thompson,
That's a blocking back, right?
Yes, you know, we used a
single
single wing.
Right.
Oh man, and I weighed 142 pounds. You know, what am I doing? You know, but I was tall as I am now, and I tell you what, I was tough. I had a lot more guts and brains. Put it that way.
Who were some of your favorite teams?
Favorite team, Newcastle High School, Aliquippa, Beaver Falls, New Brighton, Catania,
Beaver Falls, that's where
Mars.
Joe Namath was
Yeah,
from Beaver
Joe
Falls,
Namath came
right?
from there, yeah.
Yeah.
And,
How about in the pros or colleges? Colleges or pros? Did you follow any of those teams?
When I went to the University of Pittsburgh, I was on the B team there, but I'll tell you what, coming out of the Army, coming out of the Marine Corps, put it that way, I couldn't keep up with them 18-year-old kids. I just couldn't.
I can't remember. Was Marshall Goldberg at Pitt when about
Yes.
the time you were?
No, he was at Pitt in the 1934 to 38. And by the time I got to Pitt, that was 1946.
Yeah, right.
I met him in a hall.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Met him in a
He
hall.
was quite a player. I
One
guess.
time.
Yeah. So where did you go to high school then?
I went to high school at Butler Senior High School. It was on Jefferson Street, right across from one of the St. Paul's Catholic Church.
Was that your parish?
Yeah, my parish was St. Michael's.
Okay.
That was at over in the Springdale, what they call the Springdale side of town.
Well, where you went to grade school, was that a parish school? What grade school did you go to again?
I went to grade school up until the 7th grade in Warren, PA.
Okay. Okay.
Then we moved from Warren when I was 12.
Okay. Where did you move? Where did you move?
We
to?
moved to Butler, back to Butler, because
Oh, okay. Now I got it. Okay.
see, my dad found work at the Armco, in Butler. So what happened there is that I finished at McCain Elementary, and then I started junior high school in Butler, and then the high school, in Butler High School.
Okay. And did you always like history in high
I
school
loved it.
too? And
Yeah. That's what I majored in college. My BA was in history and English, and my master of letters was in history and economics.
Yeah, I remember.
Never used it.
Except history was always my favorite subject in high school, and or even in college too. And English literature, and we had a nun that she made it seem like history.
Oh,
like
yeah.
All of the old
Yeah.
kings and everything going all the way back.
I had
and it was
wonderful
almost
teachers.
like-
I had wonderful teachers at the University of Pittsburgh. There were so many. Dr. James, Dr. Ferguson. I loved him. He, and then my wife's aunt had a doctorate in history, and I loved her a lot. She was a great person, and when
What was her
I
name?
taught for 6 months at one Catholic school, Elizabeth Seton High School, in history, and I asked her, I said, Aunt Ann, I said, you know, I said, I know I'm not getting, these girls are just sitting there. It was an all-girls school at the time. I said, they're just sitting there listening to me. He says, what you should do, you go in tomorrow. He said, what are you on? I said, I'm on the Spanish-American War. He says, good. One half the class, yes, and the other half, no. I said, yeah. And that's when I went in the next day. I said, for your assignment tomorrow, you're the S group, you're the no group. Boy, I tell you, Dr. Thompson, honest to God, I had a ball. I had a ball for 6 months. I had a break up a fight between two girls one time. Sure really did.
Oh, yeah. Competition is always,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Right.
That's great. So what year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 1939, June of 39.
And so what did you do after you graduated?
I told you I spent 2 months in a hospital, not consecutively, but at least it was 2 weeks a month, 2 weeks on one opera and 2 weeks another. Then I got a little bit stronger. Then I worked in a mill. When I got to be 18, and a half, I worked at the Armco.
Okay, by a mill, what kind of a mill we're talking
It's where they make sheet steel. They had the blast furnaces, they had the open hearth furnaces to make the steel, and then they had the ingots to roll it out in the coal mill, in the hot mill, and then they rolled it out in the coal mill, and they made coils, and I worked in the shipping department.
Tell me a little bit about how you go about making steel. What do you take and how do you end up with?
Well, from what I know, I worked in the open hearth, but not making the steel itself. When I worked there in the labor gang, they sent me to the labor gang after I worked in the shipping department. What happened there is that you put so much tungsten in, you put so much manganese in, and then you throw all the other ingredients in, and then after they'd make the steel, they pour it out in these big vats.
And you have iron ore, I see.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then after it would cool off, you'd have about this much of slag on the bottom. You'd have to go dig it out with a hammer, a pneumatic hammer.
Hmm. Yeah. So how long did you work there then?
I worked there for about almost a year. And then they got a little slow, and then I worked in a shirt factory in an office for about 4 or 5 months, something like that.
And this was in Butler?
This is in Butler. It was Spade Shirt Factory.
Did you have a girlfriend at this time, or did you have?
Well, I had a
were you going-
girlfriend, yeah, and it didn't work out. One of those things.
And you remember what you were doing on December 7th, 1941?
What I was doing, I went to Mass, came home from Mass, and I was eating dinner, and the Italians had this great singer, Butti, Carlo Butti was singing, and all of a sudden they cut him off, and they said, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. That was at 12 o'clock. And I looked at my dad, and he looked at me, and my mother looked at me, and my sister looked at me, and I said, well, here it goes, what are you going to do? So I kept working for a while, and a few of my buddies that I grew up with, we started talking. I said, I want to join the Air Corps. I wanted to fly. I went down to Pittsburgh. Ostensibly to be a flyer. I wanted to fly. I passed all my tests. And I went back home and I asked my 3 buddies, I said, how about you, did you sign up for the did you sign up for the Air Corps? And they said, yeah. They later told me they signed up for the Marine Corps. So I said, you guys are nuts. So I said, I have to go down and sign papers next week. So I came to the conclusion that when I walked upstairs and I saw this guy at the typewriter typing, I said to myself, I don't know. He said, can I help you? I said, nope. I went back downstairs and there was a big sergeant with all kind of stripes on him. I said, do they play baseball in the Marine Corps? Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That-
man.
That's what. I have to laugh at that. June the 1st, 1942,
Oh.
Paris Island.
Let me back up for just a second.
Mm-hmm.
When on December 7th, when Pearl Harbor was attacked, could you see it coming? Could you see that we were getting close to getting into the war?
Yeah, because of the fact that the war was going on in Europe, you know, and sooner or later, and the fact that we were getting involved material-wise with England, because England's our mother country. Let's look at it that way. And
Yeah.
we weren't going to let them fall
Yeah.
to the Germans, no way. So,
And the your Italian neighbors or friends or family, what did they think of Mussolini and all the stuff that was going on over
my
there?
dad at first liked him, but after a while he didn't like him because of the fact that he allied himself with the wrong people. You know, he did a lot. When we were in Italy, he did a lot in roads, schools, and stuff like that. But when he allied himself with Germany, that killed it. Italy, it killed him. Sad thing,
Yeah.
but that's what happened.
So you're heading to Paris Island.
Yeah.
And what was that like?
Yeah. You couldn't get out of there. I mean, it had, they call it an island, it's truly an island. You have to cross the bridge, and it's about a mile and a half of swamp. And we were on this big van, and we were all jammed in there like sardines, and we could see these Marines, they were going up and down, and they looked at us guys up at the top up there, and the first thing I heard was, "You'll be sorry," you know. So what are they saying, "You'll be sorry"? Well, I found out. First thing we got when we got off of that meat wagon that I call, I mean, was blankety blank this and blankety blank that and take this and do that. It was a different thing. What can I tell you? Boot camp was tough.
Yeah.
It was the first time I've ever been away from home, but by the same token, the training was good, and it was rough.
One of the movies that I remember so much was the DI, Jack Webb. He was a drill instructor at Paris
Yeah.
Island.
Yeah.
And he made it look like it was really pretty tough. I also meant to ask you, was your family religious when you were growing up, pretty much?
Oh yeah, we're all Catholics, and we attended mass, and hey, we have to believe in something. Believe in God, that's for sure.
Right.
I know I do.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
You got through Paris Island. Do you remember some of the things that you went through? Anything that stands out in your mind when you were going through that?
Well, the thing about Paris Island that I remember, you always had to shave in the morning. So, one morning, me and the friends that I signed up with, three of us, including myself, four, decided not to shave. So, after morning chow, they lined us up, the usual. We were going out in the boondocks, standing at attention. DI come walking up to me. Did you shave this morning? No, sir. What did you say? Well, no, sir. What did you say? He had me screaming at the top of my voice. So we had to run all the way back to the tent, grab our razors, and come back, and 4 of us lined up, 2, 2, 2, and 2. We shaved each other. My face was all cut up, dry shave. From that time on, hey, we shaved, made sure we shaved. That was one. Another thing that I can remember, there will be no card plan at all. So Sunday, fellas next to our tent, somebody had a deck of cards. They were caught playing cards. DI caught them. Packs, rifles, boondocks. He marched us about 5 miles into the bar, and all I looked, I saw a big pit.
So all of you had to go.
Yeah, we all had to go. A big pit. It was enormous, but I'd say about 30 foot deep. I mean deep, down into the pit. And we went through every exercise that he could think of. Then, the worst part, Dr. Thompson, is put your feet up in the air, laying on your back, and put your rifle straight up, and hold it there. Don't move. So I said, I'm not gonna last long. So I took my canteen and I put it behind my back, unknown to him, and that held me up. One guy, I'll never forget his name, Chofi. He was sort of, he was a tough-looking kid. He was from Newcastle, and he couldn't keep his feet up and his rifle up in the air. Doctor, I'll tell you what, you try and do that.
Well, I can imagine.
So he took a rope. And he tied his feet and his hands to the rifle. And then he took the 4 guys that were playing cards, after we were all done, marched us up on top of the hill, and they had to run as fast as they could at port arms and slide down this hill head first. And by the time they got done, they had a furrow dug about this wide, and the earth, it was clay. Thank God it was clay and no stone.
Yeah.
They had a chute from 30 feet down, all the way down the bottom. And another thing, there will be no pogey bait. Pogey bait is candy. You don't eat candy. You eat candy, you get pimples on your you-know-what, and you won't be able to shoot your rifle. You understand that? No, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. He caught one guy eating pogey bait, okay? All right. One at a time, we went into this room. He was sitting there, and this friend of mine that I grew up with, played football together with, Louis Saint-Luc, he went in before me, and he said, "Do you like pogey bait?" He said, "No, sir." He eats candy like it was going out of style. And he said, "Do you like to go to movies?" They were complaining, no movies, no pogey bait, stuff like that. He said, "You like to go to movies?" "No, sir." I was laughing because I was laughing on the outside. He said, "Frangona, is that you?" I said, "Yes, sir." "What's that? Get in here." So I come in. He said, "Do you like pogey bait?" I said, "No, sir." And he had me screaming at the top of my voice, "Get up against that bulkhead." He got my head, wrapped it up against the wall. He says, "You're out there laughing, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, sir." So from that time, that was no pogey bait. At the end of the rifle range, he had boxes of candy there that were sent from home. This one guy that got us into trouble snuck it in. I took what happened is I took the Catholics to Mass, and on the way back, he stopped at PX, and he was I said, "Hey, you're going to get us into trouble." I said, and I'm running. I'm supposed to be in charge. I said, "You're going to get me in trouble. I'll be right out." So he came out with a candy bar. He got caught eating it. So we had to suffer. We all suffered.
Yeah.
It taught us a lesson. We found out later, I mean, you find out later, one guy messes up in combat, that's what he was teaching us.
Yeah. But
You know.
invariably the guys that I've interviewed, especially Marines, say,
Yeah.
that's what's probably saved their lives.
Oh, yeah.
You work together as a
That's
unit,
what- I mean,
and
yeah.
you just do things and don't even think about it. You just
You just, I mean, if you don't trust the guy next to you, if you can't depend on him, you're done. I mean, it's just
Those other three fellows that joined the Marine Corps when you did, were they down at Parris Island the same time you were?
yes, and here's what happened. One of them eventually wound up in the 3rd Marine Division, and he was in Bougainville,
Right.
and he got moo which is a term that the Marines use for encephalitis. And he was sent back to the States. And that was the only bad thing that happened to him. Carl Harold was in the 2nd Marine Division. He saw a lot of action, Saipan, Tinian, and 2nd Marine Division was in to help on Iwo. And John Drozda was in the 5th Marine Division. He was on Iwo. And I eventually wound up in the 1st Marine Division. I was on Okinawa, then from there to North China. But
And all the guys made it back home okay.
yeah, we all made it back home okay. Right now, at the present time, I'm sorry to say, there's only 2 of us living. It's me and Carl. And we write to each other, and he lives in Butler, and I keep in close contact with him.
So where did you go from Parris Island then?
From Parris Island, Doctor, I'll tell you what, my life was a conglomeration of mishaps. So half of my platoon, 402, was sent overseas as replacements at Guadalcanal because our training was over.
Were you with the 1st Marine Division then?
No. In August of, our platoon was done in August, the end of August. The Marines hit, the 1st Marine Division hit Guadalcanal in August.
1942.
I forget, I don't know if it was 1st or 2nd, like that. So they needed replacement. Half of them went there. And through the years, they went from, the 1st Marine Division had Guadalcanal, Cape Gloucester, Peleliu, and Okinawa was the last campaign. Well, from all the fellas that I knew that went over there, none of them made it back alive. Because I got the reports, we used to get none of them from my platoon made it back alive. I was sent up to the main base, and I asked the first sergeant, I said, what am I supposed to do? He says, you're going to be a runner. I said, runner for what? He says,
main base, where was this?
in Parris Island.
Still at Parris Island.
Yeah,
okay.
Parris
I got
Island.
you. Okay.
So I said, what's the story? He said, you do what you're told. I said, I am doing, but I didn't join the Marine Corps to be a runner. What do I have to do? He says, when you get messages, you get on that bicycle and you run messages. I did that for 3 weeks. Finally, I was fed up to here. So I went up to him. I says, I want to see the lieutenant. Okay, he says. He brought me in there. And the lieutenant says, what's your problem? I said, I didn't join the Marine Corps to ride a bike. What? I said, just like I said, sir. I said, you know, what am I doing? He said, let me look at your record here. He said, well, he said, an afterthought, did you graduate high school? I said, yes, sir. What course you take? I said, commercial. What's that? I said, bookkeeping, accounting, typing, shorthand. He says, good. He says, you'll have your orders within the week. 2 days later, I was on a train going up to New River, Camp Lejeune, to supply school. I said, what's that? You'll know. So for 3 months, all I did was learn how to pack this, pack that, do this, do that. That was all. Now, you know as well as I do, they teach you one thing in the Marine Corps, but I'll tell you something, you're always a rifleman. So at the end of the third month, I looked on my list. They had a list, and they had your name on there. And here I was sent to the 7th Barrage Balloon Squadron down in Courthouse Bay in Camp Lejeune. So I said, what's that? He said, you'll know when you get there. I said, you train me for one thing, I'm going to learn balloons. You learn balloons. So for about 4 months, all I did was haul balloons up, learned about generators. One time in a big wind, I was stuck up in the air about 20 feet. I thought I was going to die. But after that, I met Lieutenant Henry was in charge. I liked him a lot. He was great. He was from Massachusetts, someplace in Massachusetts, and I got to like him a lot. And one day he said to me, he says, well, you don't have to worry about hauling them balloons and worrying about generators, because we do that during the day, then we do routine boondocking, you know. But he said, you don't have to worry about that, he said, because we're disbanding. I said, what? I said, we're disbanding. He says, yep. He said, so I said, okay. So what happened is I got put into an MP outfit. So I was an MP for about 6 or 7 months, something like that. Not quite that long. I think it was about 6 months.
At Lejeune?
At Camp Lejeune, at Courthouse Bay.
I spent a week at Courthouse Bay.
You know where it's at?
Oh yeah.
You know that one barracks? It's when you come down the main drag where the guard shack is. Come down to the main drag. The administration building is over to the right at the bottom, and then there's a building over to the left. That was our amphibian tank building.
Yeah.
That's where that comes later. But when you come all the way down, the first barracks you see that faces the bay, that's where I was. That was my home. But I used to put guys on guard duty, and this one, I wasn't too sharp at that time. I got a recruit. He was a recruit just out of basic, and he kept asking me. He said to me, he says, how's it feel to get shot? I said, I don't know. I haven't been in combat yet. I said, I haven't the slightest idea. I said, what you do, I said, is just take it as it comes. I said, I don't know what to tell you. I put him on his post, took him to his post. When I went to pick him up after 4 hours, here he took his pistol out and killed himself. Shot himself right through the stomach. And I had to report it, and naturally they asked me questions, but I should have picked that up. I wasn't sharp enough at that time to know that he was going to commit suicide like that. He just couldn't hack it, you know. Then after that, was taken off of guard duty. Oh, I gotta tell you a story. Big shot. I was a corporal of the guard one day, and the fellow that I put on post number 1, you know where the guard shack is when you go? Yeah, why? He came in, he says, there's some sergeant running down the hill down here. He says, he come right by, he wouldn't show me his ID or anything. I says, what? So I jump in the half ton, and I take off after him. 3 up, 3 down, gunnery sergeant. he had 4 or 5 stripes. He must have been in the Marine Corps since since ages. So I jump out and I says, why didn't you show our sentry up there? He says, I don't have to. I said, yes you do. I said, let me see it. I said, if you don't show it to me, I said, I'm gonna have your can thrown on the break. I looked at his name, Sergeant, I'll never forget his name. I swear to my God, I'll never forget it. Sergeant John Hudak. So I said, okay. I said, now you come through that guard check up here. I said, you show it. You're no better than anybody else. You understand that? He says, all right. Half broke, you know. So, get up Monday morning, Corporal Joseph Frangona, gunnery school. I go in I said, they've taken me, I said to Lieutenant Henry, I said, they're sending me to gunnery school. I said, what do I, you know, he says, Corporal, that's what you have to do. I said, okay. So I go up to that one building that I was telling you. I walk in there, there's about 40 or 50 of us in there. Who comes walking in? He looks around. He says, by the time I get done with all of you, he said, you'll know how to break it down everything that's in the Marine Corps. He looked at me and he says, especially you. I did too. I had a month and a half of that. I could break that blindfolded. M1, 45, 30 caliber, whatever it was, BARs. That was it. I come out of there, got done with there.
How did he treat you? I mean, the rest of
Oh,
the
he was nice. I met him at in the hall one day in the barracks. He says, you did right. He says, but you know, he says, you did right. You did what you're supposed to do. Yeah, I said, well, I'm sorry I had it be that way. I said, but you know, when you get orders, that's what you have to do. So he said, you did all right. But you're good. He said, you learned, didn't you? I said, yes, sir. You don't have to call me sir. So from there, I was more or less put on limbo after gunnery school. And it came to pass that I was put in an amphibian tank outfit. That was another education. I said, this Marine Corps is really something else. But I'm telling you something. Everything that transpired helped me. Invariably, it became something that helped me, not then, but later, not only in Marine Corps life, but in civilian life. And I was in the amphibian tank outfit for about 6 months.
Let me ask you about that,
Yeah.
amphibian tanks. The Navy had their coxswains on those, didn't they? And so what was it that you guys did? Just learn to jump in the water? And
Yeah, we trained with them,
I see.
Doctor.
Okay.
You know, the guys that I trained with were really fellas that were either in the Marine Corps for 4 or 5 years, or were fellas that had made the Marine Corps their primary objective in life. And they were a tough bunch, but they were good guys. And then we got orders to ship out. I had my sea bag packed and everything else. Oh, my orders came through, they made me a sergeant then at the time. He said, the following men will drop out. Sergeant Frangona, and the other fellow that I know was Sergeant McDermott. I'll never forget those names. It's funny how how you remember. So I was mad. I was angry, really angry. So I said the first time, I says, how come they're shipping out? He says, well, don't ask me. He said, they got too many sergeants in there. you're the junior sergeant, you're staying. So I said, I want to see the captain. He says, Frangona, he said, get dressed in greens. I'll take you. So I went up to the captain, got dressed up, shaved up. Eddie, what's your problem? I said, sir, I said, I've been in the Marine Corps. I went to this school. I went to that. I said, here I am. I'm still here. It's a year and a half. I said, what am I doing? He says, are you questioning what the Marine Corps does to you? I said, no, sir. I said, but I'm tired, you know, I'm tired of just being shifted around. Why was I held back? I said, why can't I join the 29th Marines that are training here? He says, you do what I tell you. I said, yes, sir. He says, I'll get you out of here. I said, yes, sir. So what happened is that the 29th Marines shoved out. They later became incorporated into the 6th Marine Division. I was lucky. They took a beating on Okinawa. But anyhow, to make a long story short, I got put into the 46th Replacement Battalion, which we went through a lot of training in the boondocks. And one night, Dr. Thompson, we didn't get home to the base until 2:30 in the morning. I was covered with mud. I was so tired. Boondockers were full of mud. I was mud from head to toe. I went into the shower. I took my rifle, my pack off, put it on. I went in with all my clothes and just washed myself out. I took my boondockers off.
Boondockers are your boots, right?
Yeah, I took my boots off. And first sergeant come up to me in the morning and says, get all the guys out. We're going up to Hadnot Point. I says, for what? Why do you ask me? Just do what I tell you. I says, okay. He says, dress in greens. They took us up to Hadnot Point. For 8 hours, we took tests. And it was a succession of word problems, comprehension, math, the whole bit, a little bit of math, not real math, big math, but enough to make you think, you know. I forgot, you know. 2 weeks later, I'm up at the machine gun range. I was on work. Lieutenant Henry was there with me, and I was firing a .30 caliber, and the first sergeant come up with his Jeep. Cap wants to see you. Told the lieutenant. I said, what did I do wrong? Don't ask any questions. Get on the Jeep. I get on the Jeep. He says, you get dressed in your greens. He says, you shaved this morning, right? He says, shave again. I said, twice in the morning? Do what I tell you. Okay, Sergeant. Hey, I ain't gonna get in trouble. So, go up before the captain. He has my book here. And he said to me, he says, you made the highest score in the test. I said, sir? He says, we want you to go to OCS. I said, I was stunned. I said, I'm the only one. They must, you know, the only group in that whole replacement battalion, me, you know? So he says, you get your grades from school and have them to me within 2 weeks. So I wrote my sister, she sent them to me. And he kept asking me every day. And Dr. Thompson, as God is my Savior, I was so sick and tired of being bounced around, whether it was apathy or boredom or just plain being filled up with nothing. I said, this war's gonna be over, and I'm not gonna see anything. I said, I'm out of here. First sergeant told me, he says, you're nuts. He says, you can do anything you want. I said, I'm leaving. So I went with the guys, got shipped to, forgot about it. I went to, sent to Camp Pendleton here in California.
Let's take a pause. I got to change the tape. What year are we talking about? What month, basically?
September of '44. I was here, California, September '44. So
How'd you come on train, or how'd you get out here? What was that like?
we went on a train down from Camp Lejeune, down through Louisiana, down through the South Louisiana, then to Texas. Oh my God, what a cattle car that was. Oh my. And so we got to Camp Pendleton, and from there, more training. And I'll tell you what, when we got here, September, October, November, I mean, we were taking showers outside like it was nothing, you know. And we shipped out in February of '45 overseas. And up until the time I shipped out, we were taking showers outside. Camp Pendleton at that time was nothing but a tent camp. I don't know what it is now, and I understand that it's different. Probably have barracks.
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't
I'm sure
know.
they did. Yeah.
But that's it. So
Then, where did you go from Pendleton then?
from Pendleton, I was on board the APD 142, the Aranac, and
It's like a troop ship. It was
yeah,
a troop ship.
it was
or something?
just a 46th replacement draft. We had 3 destroyers as an escort, and
So how many guys were in that replacement group?
about 2,000 of us. And every time I get up in the morning, I could see the sun, you know, it was at our rear, you know, and about 10, 15 days out at sea, I got up one morning, and here the sun was on our port side. I said to one of my friends, I said, we're turned. How do you know? I said, well, the sun's on our port side. I said, here, I didn't know until later in years in my life that we were the replacements for EWO. EWO was hit in February of 45. And so they didn't need us, thank God. So from there, we went to Pearl Harbor. We stopped at Pearl Harbor for about 3 hours, did some exercises, got on board ship again. We're sailing south, and I said the sun still on the port side, we're still south. We wound up in Guam. That was, see, we were in March, let me get this right, March. We were in Guam at the latter part of March, and more training. The heat there was terrific, 102, 103 in the shade. And April 1st, Okinawa was hit by the 1st Marine Division. The 3rd, what would they call it? The 3rd Amphibious Corps. That was composed of 2 Marine divisions, the 1st Marine Division and the 6th. And there were 4 Army divisions, the 27th, the 7th, the 96th, and the 77th. And they were good outfits. The 7th Division I liked real well, because I've got a story to tell you about that later. But I loved the 7th Army. They were on our right all the time. But anyhow, we trained there, and from what the reports that we got, the initial landings were unopposed. And in fact, the 1st Marine Division, they captured the Kadena, the airport, the Kadena Airport, and they set up huts and camps and stuff like that. They were having a ball. I said to myself, I said, they may be having a ball now, but there's something more in the offing. So what transpired is that by the end of April, we were on board ship again, headed toward Okinawa, and what happened is that the 1st Marine Division started moving south. They started getting hit hard with casualties. So when we landed there, I have to tell you a story about this one kid, and I even wrote a poem about him. When we were going in, I could see the whole area there was full of our ships, destroyers, battleships, flat tops. Looked like the whole American Navy was there. But this one kid that was in front of me, I thought he was praying. We were going in, and we were up. You're up against the gunnels of a Higgins boat, and I thought he was praying. And here, one of the waves was pretty hard, and when it hit, I went over the top of him, hit his steel helmet. Here he was reading a comic book. I said, man, if he's reading a comic book, I said, nothing faith. But unfortunately, he was killed 2 days later. We had to dig in that night. Japanese come over with some bombers. 4th of July all over again. Next day, we were moved up to the front lines. We relieved the 27th Army Division. The 27th Army Division, from what I understand, fought a lot of battles. They had 4 or 5 campaigns, and the guys were just filled up here, so we relieved them. And when we relieved them, I was put in the I was in the 1st Regiment. And when they put us up to the front lines on the 2nd day that we were there. When they were taking us up to the front lines, I saw these 10 6-wheelers. I counted them, and they were stacked with Marines that were piled like cordwood. And I said, this is no joke, to myself. And so I was in B Company for a while, and one of the guys that I was with, that I went overseas with, first day we went up, we were told I was given a squad, and he was hit by a mortar shell right beside me, and ripped his back wide open, about 2 foot. The piece of hot metal that right on my boondocker, and I just kicked it off like it was nothing. The worst part of that, Dr. Thompson, was that you couldn't see where the Japanese were. Their tracers were white, their tracers were white. They had white tracers, and to see the white tracers in the dark, you couldn't pinpoint them too well. And the configuration of the Kishi, that's what I found out we were at. The configuration of it was that it was like this, then there was another supporting outfit over this way, so that they had converging fire from both sides. So you had to be darn careful what you were doing.
How far inland were you about that time?
I would say it was about halfway in the island. The island is 60 miles long. The Okinawa in the Ryukyus is 60 miles long, and at its narrowest point, it's 18 miles. And after the campaign was over, we were on Motobu. And Motobu was on a high plateau, and you could look out and you could see the ocean on both sides. So
Mm. So you were a platoon sergeant then?
Yeah, I had a group. But-
How many under you? Or,
I ran a squad at first, six or seven, and I was there for a while. But what happened is that one day I was out in the field, and we had to cross a rice field. And I looked behind me, and I could hear planes. And I knew they were our planes, SBDs.
yeah, dive bombers.
You got them.
Yes.
You got them. You got a replica of that
That's right.
downstairs. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I said to the guys, I said, don't worry. I said, but when they start dropping bombs, I said, better scatter. So they scattered one way, and the only way I had to go was run across this rice field, and I try to hit the Okinawans. They built these little, what do you call them, levees?
Yeah. Dikes.
To
or something
walk
like
on,
that.
and I try to hit that. I didn't make it. I tried to go over it because the planes start opening up with machine guns and rockets, and the rockets, they were low. Man, were they low. The first three were low. All of them were low. But fortunately, when I hit that, when I was completely immersed in water and mud up to my ears, what happened is that I was very fortunate because the other six, there were a squadron, 3, 6, there were 9. The other 6 didn't open up on it. The rockets, right over our head, they hit an ammo dump up ahead of us. They wounded about 14 of our guys. And 3 days later, I wound up with a dengue fever, bad, real bad. And I was sent back to headquarters company, 1st Regiment, 1st Battalion, 1st Regiment. But it was no lark air either because it was a conglomeration of, we did everything, from hauling ammo, from supporting B Company, from in supporting B Company, when they get casualty, half of us would go up and help out. Then when they'd get replacement, then we'd come back. They'd shift us around. Marines are everything. You know that. We do anything, It was just the main thing that I encountered there was the fact that you had to prove yourself, and once you did, then you got acclimatized to their ways, and they got acclimatized to you, so that you became an entity, because it was tough. It was tough going in as a replacement. I wish I could have gone in there sooner, but hey, you just do what the Corps tells you.
Right. Yeah.
One day, Lieutenant George Roeder was in charge of our company. He told me, he says, you take your squad out. He said, I just got a call from my former company, B Company. He said, there's some Japanese out in this field. He says, I want them cleared out. I says, okay. So I said to the guys, I said, scatter. I said, but 5 yards apart, not in a straight line. I said, don't get in a straight line, whatever you do. Okay, Sergeant, okay. So the man on my furthest right opened up with his sub-Thompson, killed 7 of them in a trench. They all started, I said, don't do it. I hollered at him. I said, don't do that. And they said, why? I said, just don't do it. Just hang in there because you don't know, you know? So I just keep walking. And as they were looking that way, I happened to look over to my left and I saw about 15 to 20 Japanese, they were about 35, 40 yards away from me. And by the time I realized they were Japanese, they were gone. But they were unarmed. They were unarmed. So it's one of those things. I wanted to make sure what they were before I started shooting.
Yeah.
But by the time I got to that point, they were gone. They were unarmed. So we went through the field. We didn't get any more. We didn't kill any more there in that field. I went back to the ones that were dead, and I opened up their tunics, and they didn't have any weapons on them at all, no grenades. But they did have these. They had a sash. A couple of them had sashes with 1,000. You know, the woman in Japan would make they'd take this white sash and they'd run a white needle through it until it became a little ball, and they'd put 1,000 of them, so it's for good luck.
Oh, mm-hmm.
The guy didn't make it. There was a couple of them that had it, and they were unarmed. And what happened is that I think that we moved up so fast on them that I looked up inside this hill, and they had to be people who worked in their first aid, because some of them were wounded. They already had bandages on them. So that was one case I'll never forget. I mean, and there were other ones that, another one that I'll send you a thing on. I'll send you the report on that really intrigued me. That there were some things that made me laugh at times, because I asked my lieutenant, I said, Lieutenant, I said, I need a pair of boondockers real bad. He says, yeah, he says, I'll tell you what you can do. He says, 7th Army Division's up over that hill up there. He says, how about you going up and don't get your can shut off? So I crawled up through the bushes, you know, and left my pack and rifle behind and stuff. I crawled up through the bushes, and I saw this guy walking, this army fella, and I hollered out, hey, back. He almost jumped out of his shoes. He says, what's the matter? I said, I need a pair of shoes. He says, what size? I said, size 10s. He said, stay where you're at. So he brought me a pair of nice, I took them off, put my arm, great, I tell you, greatest thing in the world. And 2 days later, my dungarees were so full of salt that they were tore. And I asked the lieutenant, I said, you know, Frangona, he says, you're always asking me. Oh, I said, I need a pair of dungarees. Look at them. I'll get you a pair. So he got me a pair from the Army, an Army top. I had Army boots and an Army top. So it was only my faded green trousers to show that I was a Marine. That was one thing.
Yeah.
Coming down to, did I tell you I got dengue fever?
You did, yes.
I tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Bad. That was 3 days of mud and rain, and I don't know how I lived. They couldn't evacuate me because of the mud and rain, Dr. Thompson. They just couldn't. Let me see. Tell you one thing more. We got down to the end of the island, and as we were going by, I passed over Naha, okay? We passed over Naha. We went around, instead of going down through Rokyo Peninsula. Rokyo Peninsula stands out near the south end of the island. Instead of going that way, because we'd be subjected to fire from across the bay, we went around them. So that night, I was about 5 hours, I'd eaten my can of beans. The lieutenant, first sergeant, came up to me and he says, "Hey Joe," he says, "you think you can get some gasoline for our tanks?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't know the way back there." See, he asked somebody else, and they forgot. So I said, "Yeah, I'll go." Sorry, I said, "but I'll have to go down through down through that road down there." He says, "Well," he says, "I'll tell you what." He says, I'll get you up at 0500 in the morning." He said, "But you got to watch." He said, "They'll be shooting at you." I said, "Take the chance." I said, "I don't know that way." So that's what I did. And I told that driver, came up from the motor pool, I said, "You get across that bay." I said, "Before you start, you rev that motor up. When you get it in gear, buddy, you better hike it. You understand that?" He said, "Okay, Sarge, okay." So we started out. Dr. Thompson, I don't know how I made it, because I could see the white tracers coming across the bay. They were coming in front of the truck and underneath. So help me, Lord, I don't know how we made it. Finally we got down to the bay. We got down to the bay, and they were loading supplies. And there was this cute black Marine, I'll tell you. And I got up to him, I says, I need enough gas for our tanks, because our tanks were up ahead. We were out of fuel, because for the last push we were out of fuel. So he said, "How many do you need?" I said, "Just fill the truck up." So he filled the truck up with 55-gallon drums. But on the way back, we caught, holy hell, mortars, machine guns. I don't know how we made it. God was with me. But here's the funny part. I meet my can of beans. I get Lieutenant Roeder didn't say a word. First sergeant come up to me, he says, "Nice job." I said, "Yeah, thanks a lot." So I meet my can of beans, and I look down, and here comes this Jeep across the same road and as soon as they got fired at, they piled out of the Jeep while it was still running. The Jeep went down over the hill, and they piled up, and they crawled up, and he was an Army colonel. He says, "What outfit is this?" And I told him. And I happened to be the first one he saw. And so I told him what it was, So he says, "How do you Marines put up with this?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "We just do it." He says, Where's your commanding?" I says, "Over there." He grabbed the field phone. And inside of an hour, they had four tanks with 105 howitzers mounted on them. And they laid a barrage at night, horizontal and vertical. They bracketed that whole area. And that night, to this day, I don't know, but I don't know who set up machine guns. I think it was an Army outfit. When the Japanese tried to cross that bay, they just shot the heck out of them. There was about 50, 60 bodies floating on that bay. But we got our oil, and our 1st Regiment was held in reserve. The 5th and 7th made the last push on Kanishi Ridge, and that was it. And I watched it like it was a movie, We used our heads during the latter part of the campaign. We used more tanks with flamethrowers and more small tanks, which we called weasels, with flamethrowers. Whereas before, we used to just try to hit those, when I was in the earlier part of the conflict in B Company, Barton Baker Company, we used to try to hit those with flamethrowers, with men using with our flamethrowers, and to keep them pinned down with our artillery. And we just lost a lot of people that way. But we got smart toward the end. Okay.
Yeah, do you remember what you were doing or when you first heard about the atomic bomb being dropped?
I was on Motobu Peninsula. We had gone to Chow, and before we went to Chow, we heard that the first atomic bomb was dropped, and I said, I don't think we'll have to hit Japan. And I'll tell you, I was happy because The men that I had gone overseas with, a lot of them got killed. And I was happy. I knew, because our outfit was under strength. We were, full strength, we were around 11,000. That's excluding the artillery that we had, 11th Artillery. We had 11th Artillery Battalion, but 11,000 is about our full strength in the infantry, the 1st, 5th, and 7th infantry divisions. But to me, to do anything further, we would have to got more replacements from the state. And when the second atomic bomb was dropped and peace was declared on August the 15th, they took more of our men and sent them home. Lieutenant Roeder went home. He was in every campaign at the Marine. My first sergeant, who I dearly thought, respected him a lot. He married an Australian girl when our outfit was in New Zealand, and he went back. They sent him back to New Zealand, and we lost a lot more people. Our company normally was pretty close to about 215, 200. We were down to about 90, 80. So what I'm trying to say right now is that when we got our orders to leave for China, our outfit was badly under strength.
And what was the purpose of going to China?
All right, purpose, as I was told by, we lost our first Lieutenant Roeder, and we lost the second lieutenant. So our warrant officer, Lloyd, I'll never forget his name. I liked him, I loved him, he's a good guy. And I used to ask him, I said, why do I always get those details that I have to take men out on platoons and doing it? He said, because you write letters home saying that you're doing fine, you're 10 miles behind the lines. He says, why did you write letters like that for? Because I didn't want to worry my mom and dad, I told him. But anyhow, he said to me, he says, what was the question you asked me?
How is it that what was the purpose of going to China?
He said to me, he says, we're going into China. I said, for what? He said, what do you ask questions for? I said, I want to know. He says, our purpose is to disarm the Japanese. I said, and? He said, that's what it is. I said, uh-huh. And he had a little grin on his face, so when it took us 3 days to get to China from Okinawa. And I was on board the APD-165. It's important to know that, to my way, because when we left Guam, APD-165 was the Effingham, USS Effingham. It was named after a town in Illinois. And or a person who came from Effingham, whatever. But when we left to go to China, I was on the USS 165 Effingham. It's important to know this because 7 months later, when I came home, the USS Effingham took me home. Isn't that something?
Yeah,
that's rare, isn't it?
It is, yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but anyhow, we were one day out at sea, and Mr. Lloyd talked to me. He says, I got to talk to you. I said, okay. He says, come with me. I said, what did I do wrong now? I said, I couldn't do anything wrong aboard ship. He says, no. He says, I want you to pick out 15 men of our company, the best men in our company. I says, for what, sir? He said, our Pioneer Battalion cannot make it to China in time to have our ships unloaded. I said, I have no, what do you want me to do? He says, well, you're going to have 300 Chinese coolies there, and you're going to have 3 flat cars. And he said, our 1st regiment, you know our 1st regiment's insignia? I said, yes. I said, it's a diamond. He said, you know what our 5th regiment is? I said, yeah, they have a star in their equipment. He says, and our 7th regiment has got the bars. I said, yeah. So he says, when those Chinese, I said, I can't talk Chinese. He said, you pick out the 15 best men that got a little bit up here. He said, and get the job done. Okay. Of all the things that I did, I think that's what I'm most proud of, because the men that I picked did one heck of a job. And we couldn't land with the APD because it was too big, Taku Harbor. We had to go in with a minesweeper. We had to get off on a mine. We had to get off ship, go on a minesweeper, and they took us in on a minesweeper. And full packs.
What part of China was this?
This is in North China. Taku Harbor is in North China. It's 75 miles south of Peking, which is Beijing at this time.
Yeah.
And it was only about, Taku Harbor is only about 5 or 6 miles from Tientsin. Okay, you got the point.
Mhm.
All right. So, let me see. So when we were going in, there was about 200 of the minesweepers. They were cutting the wires, and they were blowing up all the mines. And as they were coming by, they were shooting them, and one they missed, and they came right by our ships. I don't know whatever happened to that mine. You could see the nipples on it, Dr. Thompson. You know how big they are.
Mhm.
And I don't know how they missed it, but they missed it. But anyhow, we landed, and I saw a crowd of people there, We got off the minesweeper and got on there, and all these people gathered. Here they were British, and they asked us, are you the Army? And I said, no. What are you? I said, we're Marines. Where'd you come from? Okinawa. Oh, you did this. I said, we didn't do much. We got it done, that's all. I'm glad the war was over. And they had it pretty rough there, during the war, but they got on the minesweeper, and they took them to our ship, and from there they took them to, I think they took them to Hawaii, then from there they took them home. But anyhow, we did one heck of a job. I worked them in shifts. 3, they had to unload the whole, all the ships that were at sea of the 1st Marine Division had to unload them on LCIs, LCMs, and LSTs. And then they brought them because they had a low draft, they brought them into the harbor. And from there, the Chinese coolies would go down these ramps, Dr. Thompson, and they would take those big boxes, and like mules, they'd carry them up. And then I put 3 guys at the flat cars, and each one would, if one would have a star, they'd put them on the first one, so forth. 3 days and 3 nights without drink. We had canteens of water, that's all we had. With no food, 3 days and 3 nights. On the 3rd day in the afternoon, when practically the last 2 ships were there, the Pioneer Battalion comes in from Guam, and this captain comes up to me and he says, I understand you're in charge here. I said, yes, sir. He said, what's your name? And I told him. He said to me, the major wants to talk to you. I said, do you want me to come with you? He said, no, he'll come to you. You stay where you're at. I said, did I do something wrong? He said, no. My heart was beating, Major comes up to me and he says, "You did one heck of a job, you and your men." He says, "You're gonna hear from me. What outfit you from?" I told him my name. I didn't hear. Hey, I'm glad we got it done. That was my main thing. We got it done. And, you know, I was, what, 23 years old, you know. I never did anything like that in my life, but God was with me. We got it done. Now, here comes the part that's going to make you laugh. Major said to me, he says, "You get your men together." He said, "I'll have a 6-wheeler come up here and take you back to Tientsin." I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Okay, guys, let's saddle up." So, got our packs on. I said, "You guys stay here. When that 6-wheeler comes, I want to go and take a look." So I went out by the railroad tracks, Dr. Thompson, and I was looking ahead, you know, and I looked behind me and I saw all those flat cars stacked right, you know. I had my back turned to this voice. He says, "When do you think these flats will move out?" And I said, "How the expletive do I know?" And I turned around and I looked, and here was a brig general. I almost died. I saluted him. He says, "That's all right, son." He says, "Carry on." I said, "Thank you." That's the God's truth. That's it. But the first month in China, I'll go on to reiterate my experiences in China. Chinese people were glad to see us, but by the same token, they were so oppressed by the Japanese, they hated the Japanese, okay? So we had a time separating a few. But what we did is we disarmed the Japanese, and then we put them on our ships and sent them back home to Japan. And for the first month, we had a ball there in China. But after that, our 5th Regiment was stationed down by the airport where our Corsairs were. And parts of it was down in Shinwantao, which is lower, and parts of our 7th was around up near Peking, and some of it was down near the airport also. And we were so spread out that we were a very minor force. So in the 2nd or 3rd month that we were there, the Chinese communists started coming down from the north. That's when the trouble started. And we had problems. When I was there, 3 men from my regiment got killed. We had to protect the supply trains coming up from the south, from Shinwantao. That was a port there, you know, our ships could go in there without coming to Taku Harbor. They didn't have to, you know, go through the mess that we went through. And then, unfortunately, my first sergeant got shot through the head. The bullet went in here, and it came out through his lower temple.
Who were shooting? The Chinese communists?
Yes, yeah.
And for
Yeah.
what reason? They just, I mean.
Well, they wanted us out of there,
So they
and
could-
then they wanted our supplies. They wanted our supplies. They wanted us out of there, and Mr. Lloyd called me in. He said he won't be back until 3-4 weeks. It's lucky. I don't know how he lived, but he said, "You're going to have to take over." I said, "Why me? Why me?" He says, "Because you can do it." I said, "There's others. You can do it." So when our first sergeant come back about a month later, he said, I recommended you to. I said, "Well, thanks a lot, you know." But when it came my time to come home, about 7 months, I was ready to come home. I had enough. Came home.
Yeah. And you came home on the Effingham, was it?
I came home on the USS 165, USS Effingham. It was unbelievable.
And where did you dock?
We docked at San Diego. And I was under a lot of pressure there to stay in the Corps because I had April, May, 2 months, and so many days for 4 years. And they were pressuring me to stay in. In fact, my officer, when Mr. Lloyd wanted me to stay in real bad, and he said, I'll give you, recommend you for more stripes and what have you. I said, Mr. Lloyd, I want to go home. I said, I like to, he said, what do you want to do when you go home? I said, I want to go to school. I want to try to make something out of myself. So that's what I did.
Did you take a train back across country again? Did you go home on a train?
Yeah,
across country again?
from San Diego, we went to Chicago, up to Great Lakes Naval Station, up there in Chicago. And that's where I got discharged from. And from there, then they discharged me from there, paid me all my money that was due me, and from there I took a train there to Pittsburgh, and I didn't tell my parents when I was coming home, but one of the guys that I was with leaked it out, and my father and my uncle, my cousin, 2 cousins were there to greet me at the, here I came out with my Japanese rifle I carried all the way from Okinawa, and my bag from, I hadn't even shaved. You know how you become disheveled on a train, dirty. I couldn't wait. Here they were. That was it.
And so you went back to, is that when you went to, did you use the GI Bill to go to Pitt?
Yes. I had 4 years for my BA, and I worked with the GI Bill to get my master's degree.
Did you get your master's at Pitt also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so what were your majors? What did you major in?
My major, my BA was in history and English, and my master of letters was in history and economics.
And were you married by this time, or?
When I got my master of letters, I was married. I got married in '51.
And
so,
where did you meet your wife?
at the University of Pittsburgh. My sophomore year, I repped into her, walked right into her, knocked her cards out of her hand at the Syria Mall, picked them up. She gave me a dirty look. I said, I don't know who you are. I said, but I'm going to marry you. So, had the same class, and
What was her name?
her name was Joanne Bondi. And what happened is that I knew I was going to be in the same class because after I knocked her cards out, and later on, she was in the same English class as I was in. 1 o'clock or 1:30 in the afternoon, I can't remember. But a week later, I had to go down for my books. I wanted to get my books because I wanted to get that squared away. And got on a bus, got down to Pittsburgh, got on a trolley, got up to Pitt, the University of Pittsburgh, and tried to go in one of those swinging doors. And I saw this line up against the bulkhead, the wall, bulkhead. Right? And I said, what's this line? And they said, we're waiting for our books. I said, buddy, I said, I'm not going to wait for my books. No way. I said, I waited enough lines. You know, when I was in the service, you know how it is to wait in line? I said, I'm not waiting in any more lines. I'm going home. I turned around to go back, and as God is my Savior, I hear tick, tick, tick coming down the hall. I look, and it's she. I get up against the bulkhead, and this guy, little guy said to me, he says, "You're not leaving now." I said, "No, sir." You think God wasn't in it? That's how it started.
And where was she from?
She was from Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
She lived in the Upper North Side in Pittsburgh, and great family.
What did her father do?
Her father had a wholesale business in the Strip District, and he did quite well. Did quite well.
And was her background Italian also?
Her background in no, she had she came out of high school with a you know what you take in high school.
No. I meant her family. Were they from Italy? I mean, her ancestors were they
Yeah,
Italian also?
her mother and father were from Sicily. Her father was in the American Army. Yeah, he was in the American Army. He went over in France. Let's see, he was in the, if I can remember, 80th something. I can't remember, but he was in. He was over in Germany and France as an occupational force. He did a lot.
This
Yeah.
was in World War I?
It was after World War
After
I.
World War I.
Yeah.
And so what did she finish college? Did she finish?
My wife?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she became a school teacher.
Oh, she did?
Yeah, she taught school, and Joanne taught school for 2 years until our babies started coming, and
How many
and,
children did you have?
we had four girls, and
What
after
are- Oh, go ahead. What are their names?
first, the oldest one is named Cynthia Ann. She's married, got 2 children. She's a school teacher. Next one, Joanne, named her after my wife. Only it's split. It's Joann. And she's a school teacher. And she has three girls. And the third one is Donna. She's not married. She doesn't want to get married, as far as she's concerned, from what I understand. But my last one is Antoinette. We call her Tony. She has a little boy, and she's a pharmacist. She's a graduate of University of Pittsburgh, and my second daughter's a graduate of University of Pittsburgh. And her husband, Tony's husband, is a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. So we got, sir.
So where did you guys settle down after both of you got out of school and stuff?
Well, we settled down. We had an apartment in Bellevue, Pennsylvania, at first, and then when our family started growing, we bought a home in Pittsburgh proper, which is called Brookline, but it's right in the heart of Pittsburgh, and we lived there for 39 years until we moved out to Jefferson Hills. And we've been there 8 years now. This coming September, we'll be there 8 years. And we moved there ostensibly because of the fact that we didn't, our children were all by themselves, and we wanted a ranch type home, and it was less steps for my wife to climb up and down. And it was a blessing because I got tired of carrying groceries up and down flights of steps.
So what kind of work did you do then after you got out of school?
Well, I did, in my sophomore year, I started learning the trucking business.
By learning it, you mean you worked part-time in a trucking
Yeah,
outfit or something like that?
in my sophomore year, I just worked part-time to substantiate my income because I was only getting paid $75 a month, and that wasn't too much. So anyhow, I worked myself up to a point where I got to be a dispatcher and working full-time, working 8 hours, and still going to school full-time. And then when I got married in '51, it became a full-time job. And then later on, I started substitute work when I had 2 children, when we had 2 children, to substantiate my income. And that helped out. And I did that for quite a few years. I'd say about 2 years or so, but then it got to be too much because then when I went from one outfit to another, my duties got to be more deeper that in all actuality, it became my life work. Other than the fact that I taught for, like I told you before, for 6 months at Elizabeth Seton High School, and which I liked real well because I taught my course, you know, the course that I loved, history.
So you were in the trucking business then, pretty much. You were in the trucking business pretty much all
Oh
your life?
yeah,
Out of
until-
Pittsburgh, or
yeah,
Okay.
until I retired in 1985.
And so, what do you do for recreation? What do you like to do?
What do I do? Well, I like to golf. I like to hunt. And my wife doesn't think that I should hunt so much because of my age, but I feel good. You know, I'm 82, but I feel like I'm a lot younger.
What do you hunt?
Deer.
Really?
Deer. I shot a nice big one 2 years ago. Big 8-point.
What kind of gun do you use?
30-06. 30-06 with 3x9 Bosch and Lomb scope. Yeah.
And where do you play golf?
I play golf at South Hills course. It's a private. It's not a private. It's a public course, and it's nice. Yeah, you know, you can either play 9 holes or you can play 18. It's depends on what you want to do. And then I keep busy around the house. I mean, try to help Joanne out as much as I can. Like, you know, it got to the point where she was doing a lot. I said, teach me how to do clothes.
Ironing, you mean?
No, washing.
Oh, washing.
Yeah. She says, what? I said, teach me how to do clothes. So I like to, you know, I like to help her out. So you know, hey, I got to save her.
Have you played any golf out here?
Yes, I've been playing with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law,
Oh, okay.
Joe Bondi and Margaret,
Uh-huh.
and Joe's and my wife are brother and sister, and Margaret is my sister-in-law.
Where have you been playing out
We've
here?
been playing at Talquist,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been playing at what's that other one up here? Starts with a C. Oh gosh.
Mesquite?
No, not Mesquite. It starts with a C. It's over.
Oh,
It's an
Cimarron?
18-3,
Or
par 3 and a par 4.
Cimarron?
Cimarron, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I haven't played that one yet.
You ought to. A lot
Yeah.
of sand traps.
Yeah, you can see it from when you go over the bridge. Yeah, looks really
Lot of
pretty.
sand
Looks like
traps
it's really pretty.
A lot of sand traps.
Yeah. So, in conclusion, anything you'd like to say to your family? Got any advice or anything to them?
The only thing I can truthfully say that I love this country. To me, it gave me everything that my father didn't have or couldn't have because of the education that he didn't have. I can't say enough about my experiences I had in the Marine Corps. Without the experiences I had in the Marine Corps, I never would have made it in civilian life. There's no way. Because the hardcore truck drivers and things like that, it's been really tough.
Joe, thank you so much.
Okay,
Okay, thanks for coming in.
okay.